In today's software world, everything's connected. You've got microservices, apps, databases, they all have to talk to each other. But here's the catch. If you wire them together too tightly, one little change can bring the whole system crashing down. So the real question is, how do we build connections that are both strong and flexible enough to keep up with constant change?
And that's the big challenge, right? We're not just building for what we need today, we're trying to build for a future that we know is going to be different. So how do you design your APIs, your application programming interfaces, to be truly resilient? How do you build them so they can actually evolve over time?
Well, to answer that, we've got to start by shifting our mindset just a little bit. The first key to building APIs that can adapt is to stop thinking so much about objects and start focusing on the messages they send.
So why is this idea of focusing on messages such a game changer? Especially in a world full of microservices, where you might have hundreds of different services all chatting with each other. Let's break down why this one little shift in thinking makes all the difference.
It's funny, this isn't some brand new idea. It actually goes way back to a core concept in computer science. See, we often get hung up on the things in our systems, the services, the objects, but the real magic, the thing that makes it all work, is the message itself. The focus should always be on the communication, not on the thing doing the communicating.
Okay, so here's where the rubber meets the road. When your APIs are just designed to transmit objects, the client and the server get stuck together. That's called tight coupling. The client has to know the exact internal structure of the server. If the server decides to change that structure, bam, the client breaks. But when you focus on exchanging messages, you get what we call loose coupling. The server can completely change how it works on the inside, but as long as it can still understand and send the messages everyone agreed on, the whole system just keeps on ticking. And that is the secret to making things that can evolve.
Okay, so exchanging messages is a huge step forward for building flexible systems. But what if we could push that idea even further? What if the messages themselves could actually teach the client application what it can do next? That brings us to our second big idea, hypermedia.
So let's dig in. What in the world are these hypermedia-driven APIs, and how do they really take that core idea of messaging to the next level?
Think of it this way. A hypermedia API is one where the response you get back from the server basically describes itself. The message doesn't just give you a bunch of data, it also includes controls, things like links and forms, that tell the client, hey, here are the actions you can take right now. The API literally guides the application on its journey. Let's make this super clear with an example. Imagine you get a message about a shipment. Of course, it's got the data you'd expect, an ID, a description, the quantity. But here's the cool part. It also includes a list of available actions. The API is telling the client, from where you are right now, you can either refresh this data, you can exit, or you can search for a different shipment. It's not just static info, it's an interactive guide.
Now, this whole concept of an API that guides you might sound a little out there, but I promise, it's based on the most successful, most resilient distributed system ever built. And what is that system? It's the web. The very way you browse the internet every single day is the perfect analogy for how a hypermedia API actually works.
Let's be real, most APIs you run into today are just data dumps. When a program gets a response, it's like being handed a page ripped out of a book with no page numbers, no index, nothing. You've got the information, sure, but you have no context. To figure out what to do next, the programmer has to go read some separate documentation and just hope it's still accurate.
But a hypermedia API? That is like a real web page. When you land on a web page, you don't just get text. You get links, you get buttons, you get forms that show you exactly what's possible. You don't need a user manual to browse a website, and a client application using a hypermedia API doesn't need one either. It discovers what it can do as it goes.
And look, this isn't some experimental niche concept. It's the very foundation of the World Wide Web. The principles that make the web so vast and so capable of changing all the time without breaking down are HTTP and hypermedia. The takeaway here is pretty simple. If this design works for billions of humans browsing the internet, you can bet it's powerful enough for machines to talk to each other. All right, so we've talked about messages. We've talked about the power of hypermedia. What's the one big idea you should really walk away with from this whole explainer?
It all boils down to one word: evolvability. Your software is going to change. Your business is going to change. That's a guarantee. So instead of fighting it, we should be designing our APIs to expect and even embrace that change. By building loosely coupled systems with messages and creating guided experiences with hypermedia, we build systems that are adaptable from the ground up. Just like the web, we build for the future, not just for today.
So next time you're designing a system, ask yourself, am I building a rigid, brittle structure, or am I building my own small, evolvable web? Hey, if you found this useful, do me a favor and share this explainer with a friend or a colleague who might get something out of it. And of course, make sure you're subscribed for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.